And now we enter the home stretch. Just 2 weeks remain in Season 5 of the NWBA. Playoff picture is starting to become clear. Teams are really fighting hard for those playoff spots, for positioning, for pride, for glory, for everything. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Wonder Room. I am your host, King Vasser. Thank you as always for watching. Coming up on this episode, it's week 4 in review. We talk about what to expect for the last third of the season, cover the last few free agency decisions before rosters were finalized, go over new power rankings, stat leaders, and give you an insight on who has the fast track to those coveted playoff spots. Don't go anywhere. Wonder Room starts now. All right, let's get on into it. So, week 4 has come and gone. Only 3 games over the week. It was a repeat of week 1. So, week 1 rematches. Same teams, different bans. Remember, we have a new rule instituted that you cannot ban the same one you banned the first go around if you have a rematch against that opponent. That is a new rule that we put in to really expand what we're going to see from these teams down the back stretch. And we had some really important decisions and results that came out of that. Over in the Ruby League, Akala Island still at the top of the leaderboard. 13 match win streak. They sit at 13-1 now. Sunny Shore sits in second place at 11-3. Now has the jump on New Moon Island, who sits in third place, still pretty solid at 10-4, but doesn't have that much of wiggle room. Just a little bit ahead of Veilstone, sits at 8-6. Lava Ridge coming in at 7-7, currently holding that last playoff spot. Treasure Town still not out of it at 5-9, and bringing up the rear, Alfrenada at 1-12-1, and Lentamaz at 1-13. Over in the Sapphire League, Humalau still kicking strong, sitting at 12-2, best in that league. Mali City sits at a very strong 10-3-1. Burbank and Mount Hokulani both sitting at 8-6. Lavender Town holding that last spot in the Sapphire League at 6-7-1. New Bark Town at 4-10. New Bark at 3-10-1, and Humalau City at 2-10-2. It's an interesting week. Another round of forfeits, unfortunately for Alfrenada, but again, technically still not out of it, and Chris will for sure be playing this week, so you will see Alfrenada back in action. Humalau City had a draw and a forfeit, not what you want to see from Trey, especially because Sapphire League is more wide open, so you know there's still an opportunity to make that playoff spot. The big result coming out of week 4 though was Akala Island going undefeated. Mentioned last week that Alfrenada, Sunny Shore, and New Moon Island all have to play each other again, and that 3-way head-to-head was going to matter a lot in the long run, and it turns out that Akala Island was the one who went 2-0, putting them in a very good spot heading down the back stretch. Sunny Shore was able to get revenge on New Moon Island, so Sunny Shore now holds the 2 spot, so we're starting to see that top of Ruby League come more, get into better focus, but still a lot to be determined because again, 8 whole games left, or 8 whole sets left to play. So moving on to Pokemon of the Week, it was an abnormally quiet week for the Ruby League. Normally this is where the heaviest hitters reside and put up the biggest numbers, but I think as a result of specifically New Moon Island, who is no shortage of setup sweepers, had a bit of a rough week. Roaring Moon for Treasure Town ends up nabbing the award. 9 KOs in 5 games, 16 points. Still a very solid performance, just not what we've come to see from our typical Pokemon of the Week suspects over the course of the season. That's still good for 3.2 points per game, 1.8 KOs per game. So overall a solid week for Roaring Moon. Had some competition in Slitherwing, but Slitherwing only played 3 games, which is mainly the reason Roaring Moon wins the award. We like to reward Mons that are on the field longer. Obviously, one good set can make a good week, but you have to really buckle down and, play some games in order to really win that award. Over on the Sapphire League side of things, this is where all the action came through, and this was a very, very, very tough decision, but in a bit of a surprise, the award goes to Diancie of Newbark. 6 KOs, not too shabby, but 11 assists, which led the NWBA in week 4. Comes out to 21 total points, tied for second in the league, and 4.2 points per game, which was tied for fourth. We've seen Diancie be able to be a dual threat in the past, and it seems like Rhino was finally able to figure some things out in terms of how this mon really works. And as a result, Diancie, for the first time in his career, grabs Pokemon of the Week. So that's a very good accolade for it. Again, faced some really steep competition in Namorous, I for Verbank, Haxorus for Humalau. It was a really, really good week for Sapphire League Mons. Diancie comes out on top due to the KO and assists that it put up. Moving on to the power rankings. Still sitting at the top is Akala Island, 3-0 in week 4. Their win streak now extends to 13. I believe the record for the entirety of NWBA history was 19, set by Humalau in the winter of 2021, Season 2. So Akala Island still has a lot of work to do if they want to get that record, but for the time being, ain't really much to say other than this is the top team in the league right now. But right on their heels, moving up to number 2 is Humalau, also went undefeated in week 4. Humalau now sits at 12-2. Outside of their week 2, where they went 2-2, it's been smooth sailing. Kobu is not new to this. He is true to this. Has always put together a great performance, and you're seeing a classic Kobu season here. 12-2 through 4 weeks. Sunny Shore moves down just 1 spot to 11-3. 2-1, still a pretty good week, but again, the big loss to Akala Island is the decider here. But they got the win over New Moon Island, so ultimately not too bad for Sunny Shore. Just that 2-3 spot might be looking fairly locked in. Again, there's still 8 sets left to play, and things can change, especially if New Moon Island falters down the stretch. But I think you can rest assured that Sunny Shore is going to be, at the very least, a top 3 spot in the Ruby League. Mali City moves up to 4th place, also went 2-1 in week 4, sitting at 10-3-1. Again, Kevin just continuing what has been to this point the best season of his NWBA career. Outside of the loss to Humalau, can't really complain about too much. Still going strong. And again, still has to play Kogu again down the stretch, so there's a very good chance that Mali City could end up taking the 1 seed if things shake out their way. Dropping down to 5 is New Moon Island, 1-2. Not a very great week for Nico. Unfortunately, losing to both Akala Island and Sunny Shore. So that puts him in a fairly rough spot in terms of avoiding, getting that 1 seed. But 10-4 is still a great record, and very likely New Moon Island is going to be a top 3 seed as well. So overall, not that bad of a position for New Moon Island. Just obviously against the other top dogs in your league, you'd want to put together a winning performance. Verbank sitting at number 6, best of all the 8 and 6 teams. Like I said, in the past few weeks, I think that we're starting to see a bit of a turnaround for Verbank in their overall performance. And I think her and Dom are really starting to gel as a team. Only loss was to Humalau, which, it's Kobu, right? That's always a tough one to crack, and it normally takes 3 goes to finally be able to break through that team. More importantly, got the win on Mali City this week, so that's huge for Verbank. They currently sit at the number 3 spot in the Sapphire League, and while the competition is fairly tough, if Muffin can avoid the wildcard round for the first time in her career, that would be a phenomenal testament to her improvement over this season. Veilstone, treading water, went 2-1 in week 4, which keeps them at 8-6. Still sitting at number 7. Still has that number 4 spot in the Ruby League down pat. Again, there's an opportunity to move up to 3, maybe even possibly 2. But more important than anything, you just kind of want to tread water at this position and avoid missing the playoffs entirely. And Will's a pretty damn good competitor. He has the track record, so 2-1, 2-2, 3-1, those type of weeks, those will keep you steady. Lava Ridge went 3-0 in week 4, mirroring their week 1 performance, funnily enough. So they're right back into the thick of things. They moved to 7-7. The bounce back week that Avery really needed was really sputtering after that week 1. Bounced back in a very strong way, so now he currently holds that number 5 spot in the Ruby League, that last playoff spot. So that's pretty damn big. And if he can win the head-to-head with Treasure Town and sweep the season series, that will put him in a very good spot to make the playoffs. Mount Hokulani drops down to 9. Kami, once, another not very great week, 1-2. 8-6 is still a solid record, but you got to think, beat Kobu in week 2, and it was thinking, hey, Kami is making a really, strong push for that number 1 seed in the Sapphire League, and now you're talking about currently holding the number 4 spot. Not at all where you would envision this team to be after the start of the season, but there's still room to turn things around. Some big inter-league matchups coming up for Mount Hokulani. And obviously there's still some major rematches, right? So to play Humalao again, so to play Burbank again. So Kami can still turn this around and at the very least secure a top 3 seed in Sapphire League and avoid the wildcard round. But the clock is ticking. And once again, this is where the divide really sits. Lavender Town at number 10, 0-2-1 week. Very not good week for Logan. Obviously not what you want to see in the position that he was in, sitting at 6-5-1. Still has the number 5 spot, but again, there's a decent amount of wiggle room, but the rest of the Sapphire League isn't that far behind, all things considered. So you absolutely have to avoid having a week like this again. As long as Logan treads water, he'll be okay, because again, still has that number 5 spot now and has a 2.5 game lead over Newburgh Town. It's just can't afford too many more slip-ups at this point. Treasure Town sits at 11, 5-9, also dropping 1-2 week. Zebby it's been hard. I think it's been difficult to overstate just how difficult this Ruby League is. Lost to Lava Ridge and Sunny Shore. It's hard out here, man. Those top seeds in the Ruby League are really tough nuts to crack, and Treasure Town just hasn't really been able to find a great avenue of success after that first week or so. Again, same situation as Lavender Town. The clock is ticking, and a bit of a harder, or not even really a bit, a very definitely harder position to be in for Zebby, because he sits at 6, not number 5. But again, there's still some big intra-league matchups, some big rematches that if Zebby can secure some upsets, which is very much possible because Zebby is a seasoned battler, he's still good at this. There's still an avenue to make a turnaround in a last-minute push for that last playoff spot. Sitting at number 12, standing pat, is Newbark Rhino, 3-10-1, 0-2-1 in week 4. Not really much to say. You know how Rhino operates at this point. He'll give you a game or two. He can always put up a good fight. I think his general inexperience in recent generations of Pokemon is the result of him not being able to put together as complete of a performance as he could. This is more of a, let him rock out this season. He's figuring things out, and maybe next season, I think you can see things come together, right? Newburgh Town sitting at 4-10. 1-2 over the course of week 4. Loss to Humalao City really hurts, considering how winnable of a game that was, or set that was. On the other hand, beat Mount Hokulani. So we see that CJ is good enough to scrape together those wins when they matter. And we've seen before that he's able to rattle off 2-3 win weeks at the drop of a hat. So I think this is like the team to watch out for. If Lavender Town keeps slipping, I would not be that shocked to see Newburgh Town sneak in, steal that last playoff spot. So, you know, I think that's the team to watch out for in these last 2 weeks out of the teams that aren't currently sitting in the playoffs, right? And then you got your last three. Himala City moves up to 14, sitting at 1-1-1. Drew to Lavender Town, which, blah, but got the win on New Bark Town. So, you know, at this point, Trey's just trying to do his best to avoid relegation, which is possible if Rhino ends up slipping further down the stretch. It's possible that Trey can avoid that relegation match, but again, we've seen that Trey was only ever really active on Saturdays, so not the greatest formula to pull that off, but still possible that Trey can avoid being in that relegation match for the third time in his career. Lentamaz at 15, standing pat. 0-3 week. This was a real heartbreaker week for Keg. Went to game 3 in all 3 of his sets, being Veilstone, Lava Ridge, and Akala Island. Like, that is... If Keg is able to flip even one of those into a win, that's massive. The fact that all 3 of those could have been set wins is crazy to think about. Unfortunately, not able to seal the deal in any of them. Obviously, you can see the fight that Keg has. It just, again, the same trend that it's been all season. It just hasn't really been able to add up, unfortunately. And dropping down the last is All for Nada, Chris. Same story. And again, bears repeating, will be active this week. So, you know, Lentamaz and All for Nada looks like we'll actually have a true tight battle to see who gets to avoid playing in that relegation match at the end of the season. So, moving on to the weekly stat leaders. Mentioned it earlier in the Pokemon of the Week. There's been a bit of a flip. The Sapphire League, as you can see, dominates the leaderboard in week 4. In terms of KOs and Amorous, I led the way with 13 KOs. We kind of saw this coming, right? Said it before. Once Verbank acquired King Gambit, you knew that an Amorous Eye was going to show the hell up and start getting some big numbers. And sure enough, led the week in KOs. Zarude for New Bark Town putting up a 12 KO performance. That's really, really good. So that's a big week for Zarude. Breloom, also Verbank, notched together 11 KOs. As you can see, this was a really, really strong offensive week for Verbank. And Amorous Eye and Breloom put together a great performance together. Haxorus had a vintage performance, 11 KOs this week in, I believe, only 2 sets, 5 games. You know, Haxorus is taking a bit of a backseat. Kobu's not really playing the funnel offense style anymore, but Haxorus has still come together and put the team on its back when it needs to, right? That's still the Generation 8 GOAT for a reason. And lastly, Torospada and Aqua for New Bark also putting together 11 KOs. So, pretty strong week. Again, Sapphire League just running the table in terms of KOs. For assists, Diancie, mentioned before, Pokemon of the Week, 11 assists. That's fantastic. Bronzong had another 10 assists from Mali City. Bronzong has only really had 2 good weeks, but they've been double-digit assist weeks, so hard to complain about that that assist, you know, prowess, so to speak. Sandy Shots, once again, Verbank, 9 assists, very good week for Sandy Shocks, helping to enable an Amorous Eye and Breloom offense. Glamora, in a very similar role, has 7 assists, helped to enable Haxorus's big week. And 2 other Mons with 7 assists. Overquill from Mount Hokulani. Said it last week, that's a Mon you might want to watch out for to make the 2020 club. I think Overquill is at like 16 KOs on the season. Definitely more than 20 assists by now. So, a few more KOs and Overquill will be in that very coveted club. And then lastly, Tinkaton for Lavender Town putting together 7 assists. Good week for Tink. In terms of points, Amorous Eye leads the way with 22. Diancie, as we mentioned before, with 21, was tied with Haxorus. Breloom having 19. And then 3 separate Mons with 17 points. The aforementioned Zarude for New Bark and the aforementioned Tauros P. Aqua for New Bark. And also Thunderous T for Akala Island. Not Thunderous Eye this time, but obviously both Thunderouses have put together strong seasons, both of them. I would not be surprised to see both of them on the All-Star teams, which, you know, time to start looking at that. So yeah, good week for those mods. In terms of points per game, Heatran only played one set this season, or this week, and notched 3 KOs, 5 assists, and 0 deaths. That's good enough for 5.5 points per game. 2 games even, my apologies. So yeah, that's monster week for Heatran. Gengar was the one who played 3 games and still came away with 9 KOs and ended up with 5.3 points per game. So big performance there for Valley City. Southerwing also putting together a big performance in limited time. Only played 1 set, still came away with 4.3 points per game. So a very efficient week for Akala Island between Heatran, Southerwing, and Thunderous Team. Dancy putting up 4.2 thanks to its dual threat performance, and Haxorus at 4.2 as well. And then lastly, KOs per game, Gengar with the aforementioned 3, Southerwing with 2.3, Haxorus with 2.2, one last appearance from Burbank, Basculegion M, putting together 2 KOs per game. And lastly, 2 Humalau City members with 2, being Dundozo and Spydop, surprisingly enough. One of the last mods you'd expect to get 4 KOs over the course of 2 games, but hey, if it happens, it happens. So, pretty interesting that Trey was able to make that work. Moving on to the league leaders through week 4. In terms of KOs, Regidrago still holds the top spot at 40. Cleavor sits in second with 39. Those two are probably going to be the 2 leaders all the way through the end. 3 Mons tied for 33. Veluza for New Moon. And Arcanine H and Thunderous Eye for Valley City. So that is like the big dual threat, the Shaq and Kobe, so to speak, of the league this season for Valley City. Total assists, Yuxi is back to having a big lead, 39. Has fallen off that pace for NWBA record, but 8 sets left to play, so all it takes is 2 or 3 good matches for Yuxi to be right back on that pace or even exceed it. Heatran sits at 28 assists, still second. Bronzong still third at 26. Overquill with 24. And Glamora with 21. In terms of total deaths, Lycanroc Dusk now has a lead with 28. Yuxi finally off the lead at 27, still right behind it. Cresselia sitting at 26. Overquill at 25, as well as Gudra for Lintamaz, Rotom Heat for Verbank, and Tauros P Aqua for New Bark. In terms of KOs per game, Phalanx is now the clubhouse leader due to the fact that, you know, this really is a category that is led by a mon that just doesn't play that often. Phalanx hasn't played often at all, but 2 KOs per game is good enough. Toxtricity still really strong at 1.9. Raichu A in 3rd place, 1.8. Cerulege also with 1.8 for Veilstone. And then Dragonite for Humalau. Basculegion M for Verbank. And Free Agent Luxray sitting at 1.8. Again, I still think it's a little surprising that Spike just let Luxray go and didn't opt to pick it back up. In terms of assists per game, Bronzong still with the lead at 1.9, and Carbink for Valley City still at 1.6. Those two will probably lead in assists per game, especially because Carbink just doesn't really play that often. Heatran and Yuxi both sit at 1.3, and those ones do play a lot, so that's still very impressive. Diancie now moving up to 1.1 after its big week 4. In terms of points per game, Toxtricity leads at 3.4. Dragonite in second at 3.3. Raichu A now at 3.2. Phalanx at 3.0, as well as 3 others at 3.0. Cerulege for Veilstone. Chestnut for Humalau. And again, the aforementioned Luxray as a free agent. In terms of games played, Veluza, Lycanroc Dusk, and Overquill all tied for the lead at 32. Zarude sitting at 31. And 4 different mons tied at 30. Cleavor for Lava Ridge. Yuxi, Iron Treads for Veilstone, and Tauros P Aqua. In terms of matches banned, Valiant and Volcanion lead the way with 9 each. Walking Wake sits at 8, and a lot of mons sitting at 7. Zapdos for Lentimaz, Iron Moth for New Moon, and Amorous Eye for Verbank, King Gambit for Verbank, Dragapult for Newbark, and Golden Go for Humalao City. In terms of total points, Cleavor still sits at the top at 75, those assists keeping it at the top spot over Regidrago, who sits at second with 67. Again, that terrible 2, Arcanine H and Thunder's Eye sitting at 3 and 4 with 60 and 57. And Heatran moving up to 5th place with 54. You know, former MVP, we've seen it do this thing before. So interesting to see Heatran kind of claw its way up to 5th place in total points. KDA ratio, mostly the same, because again, much like KOs per game, this is a category that's led by mons that don't play games that much. Go-Go hasn't played much, still at 7. Dragonite hasn't played much, still at 7. Chestnut still at 5. Toxtricity sitting at 4. Heatran now in 5th place at 3.92. Again, that's kind of the odd man out. Toxtricity's played a few games, but Heatran has played virtually every set. It hasn't been banned for Akala Island, and the fact that it's sitting at 5th place in KDA is still very, very impressive. And then lastly, usage rate. Cleavor sits at the top spot at 43.5. Zorg H still standing pat at 41.8. Iron Treads at 41.7. Dondozo at 41.1. And lastly, Regidrago at 39.6. So we move on to this was the final week of free agency, so weren't that many moves, just 5 at the end. Sunny Shore continuing to do that really silly moving around with the lower tiers, gets rid of both of their PU Terra captains, Sneasel and Mischievous, for Lycanroc Midnight, which I believe is Stab Terra Rock and non-Stab Grass. Not sure what Spike's coming up with that one. Again, I really do believe that this either should have stayed Sneasel or been Luxray, but we'll see what he's cooking up with Lycanroc Midnight. Lastly is Whiscash, which is one that I do like. This is, you know, bulky mon. Water Ground's always really annoying. Terra Stab, Water. Terra Non-Stab, Poison. Pretty good. So I do think he will get some good defensive utility out of that pick. Akala Island getting rid of Avalugg H after one set of play for Sliggoo H. Decided, nah, I really don't need a spinner after all. And opts for a mon that, on paper, is probably just an emergency replacement for Heatran more than anything else. If Heatran, really, really messes a team up but gets banned in the playoffs, Sliggoo might be able to come in and put together some decent minutes. Lavender Town opting to get rid of Moltres G. So Moltres G, a bit of a surprise, will finish the season unrostered. Picks Palma back up, which is a welcome surprise. I think Lavender Town realized that they have a very glaring weakness to electric types and desperately needed Palmont back to be able to absorb those. So I think that is a pretty good decision. And lastly, Lentimaz opts to get rid of Slowbro G. Wasn't really happy with what it was putting forth on the table. Couldn't really find a set to really, really make it work. Instead picks up Dragalge, formerly of Lava Ridge, as an RU pick. So, very good special defensive mon. We'll see how Keg makes it work. It does have adaptability, so you could do some weird offensive stuff if you wanted to. We have seen Avery put that to use before, so we'll see how much playing time it gets in the back stretch of the season. So, as we take a look ahead to week 5, we have a new segment that will be a lot more relevant next week, but playoff clinching scenarios. There are 5 teams that currently control their own destiny, do not need any outside help to get into the playoffs currently. Akala Island and Humalao are in the same situation. They are currently the 1 seed in their leagues, and they need to win just 1 set to clinch a playoff spot. Obviously, clinching, a non-wild card spot or the top seed is going to take a lot more time in development, but right now, all those teams need to do is win 1 set, and they're in the playoffs. Mali City and Sunny Shore are the respective 2 seeds. Mali City just needs to win 2 games. Sunny Shore just needs to win 3 in order to clinch playoff spots for themselves. And then lastly, New Moon Island at 10-4. If they win out this week, that 14-4 record will be good enough to clinch a playoff spot as well. So, you are going to see, realistically, I like to think at least 3 of these teams clinch a playoff spot. I would say Akala Island and Humala are virtually locks. Mali City only needs 2 down the stretch. So even if Kevin has a random really bad week, you would only need to win 1 set a week to still make the playoffs. So I would say that he's pretty much a lock. And then Spike and Nico are also pretty much locks. Just, things could get a little weird and maybe complicate things a little bit. But these are the 5 teams that are realistically already locked in the playoffs. They just need to win a few more sets, and they're in. So, as a result, you know how it goes. Last segment, we look ahead to the Week 5 schedule. We are back to 2 intra-league matches and 2 inter-league matches. Rematches from Week 2, as well as some new opponents in the interleague part. Some fairly interesting matchups, as always. You know how it goes. New Moon Island Lava Ridge, I think, is a big one. That is the set that I really have highlighted for the Ruby League, because that is the 3 and the 5 currently. Again, it's not out of the realm of possibility for Lava Ridge to find a way to sneak out of the wild card spot if they put together a really, really compelling performance. Lava Ridge also has to play Sunny Shore, who also has to play Veilstone. So some big Ruby League matches. Over in the Sapphire League, Humalau Mount Hokulani Runback is the big one. Kami, this I think is the set that would turn the tide for this season, like massively, if he can find a way to sweep Humalau. Also has to play Mali City, so very, very crucial week for Mount Hokulani. If they can win even one of those sets, I think they put themselves in a much better position to get back to the top 3. If they can win both, that is unimaginably huge. Especially knowing that Burbank has a bit of a weak stretch, so it's gonna, it's very crucial for Mount Hokulani to get those big wins. And then obviously there's some really interesting interleague matches as always. The big one I would say is Akala Island and Mali City. You're talking about the 1 seed, the Ruby, and the 2 seed, the Sapphire. These are the type of matchups that you sit and talk about some, hey, this might be an NWBA Finals preview. Obviously, it's still way too early to really know, but it's always fun to speculate. So that, I think, is a very, very big litmus test for both of those teams to see where exactly they stand in the grand scheme of things. For tonight's Versus Seeker, pretty interesting slate. Akala Island and Mount Hokulani as a big interleague match, which should be the opener for the night. Newburgh Town and Lavender Town, that's the 5 and the 6. I mentioned earlier, Newburgh Town can put together a convincing week. Look out, they might be able to sneak their way into the playoffs, and it would have to start with this win over Lavender Town because they have a really, really rough week. They got Humalau, they got Sunny Shore, and they got New Moon Island. So CJ's got his work cut out for him, but I think a win versus Lavender Town is the start. And if you can get that win, we can worry about the rest as it comes. And then lastly, the main event of the evening. I don't want to call this a tank bowl, but you kind of have to. Lentamaz and Alfredata. Lentamaz's only win came in week 2 in that best-of-1 metronome mirror against Alfredata. And Alfredata has been missing for half the season. So we'll see an actual match out of these two. And I'd like to think the winner will put themselves in a much better position to avoid that dreaded relegation match. Obviously, Keg has been a bit of a fan favorite, has impressed a lot of people. People don't want to see him fall to relegation. At the same time, Chris is a pretty experienced battler, and the circumstances have just not allowed him to be able to divert his full attention to Pokemon. So you don't really want to see either of these teams play in the relegation match, but somebody has to. So I think that's a very big one for tonight. So with that being said, that will wrap up this week's episode of Wonder Room. Thank you all for watching. As always, I greatly appreciate the support. Thank you all for those who watch on Twitch, for all those who watch on YouTube, and stay tuned. Go ahead, drop a like, a subscribe, all that love, and be prepared for more NWBA content headed your way.